Donald Trump, meanwhile, showing no signs of slowing down. Let's get to politics for a moment. A new Reuters Ipsos poll shows Trump is still leading the Republican field with 24%, dominating, unchanged from before that debate Thursday. His closest rival is former Florida Governor Jeb Bush, who's at 12%. Last hour on Fox and Friends, Trump said he's still keeping the door open for a third independent party run.
I want to run as a Republican. I'm leading in every poll. One poll came out yesterday. I'm at 32%. And nationally, and that's what I want to do. I want to run as a Republican, but I do want to keep that door open in case I don't get treated fairly.
I want to bring in former McCain campaign senior advisor Nancy Pfotenhauer. Nancy, good to have you on the program. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, your takeaway on the Trump dominance so far.
Well, you know, I think that the American population is obviously frustrated with Washington, D.C. I also think there's real entertainment value in following Donald Trump. You never quite know what he's going to say. His positions have, shall we say, evolved over time. So even those of us who follow it are not sure where he's going to go on things, for example, like trade.
Right. Yeah, we haven't heard real solutions, Wilbur Ross, in terms of some of the issues that the country faces. It's all about, I'm in the polls. I mean, other than the wall that he wants to build between Mexico and the U.S.
Right. I think he's outlined objectives rather than methods for getting there.
Yeah. As a business person, do you have a favorite yet?
It's a little early to pick names.
Nancy, who's doing the best aside from Trump in your view?
Well, I think actually the big takeaway is that most of the mainstream Republican candidates are all strongly aligned around a pro-economic growth policy agenda. And so for that standpoint, I'm pretty happy. If you look at the last debate, I think particularly at Kasich, who did well, unfortunately did support Medicaid expansion. And so that's a little bit at odds with saying you need to reform entitlements at the federal level. And I actually think Governor Bush was stronger than I had expected on things like regulations, mandates, and taxes.
Right. Nancy, in terms of Donald Trump, though, he talks about being treated fairly by the Republican Party. But at what point, because fair to him is not being criticized for things he's said in the past and his behavior and things he's saying this very day. So at what point? He's not going to give in. It's going to be scorched earth for the next year and a half.
It's very troubling to me because, you know, part of this is that if you're in this arena, you've got to expect to answer tough questions. And frankly, the moderators were doing their job by asking them. If you look at the debate that was held earlier that day, and people have been commenting about how well Carly Fiorina did in that debate. Well, I wasn't surprised at all. We worked together very closely in 2008. She was in many environments that were openly hostile. Can you say Chris Matthews? And so to be in a debate where she's just being asked questions that are substantive and challenging intellectually was never going to faze her. Yeah. So, I mean, I wasn't surprised that she did well at all. Of course she did well. I'm just a little surprised at the hair trigger aspect to Mr. Trump's reaction, because that comes with the arena.
Yeah, Carly Fiorina, time and again from the day that she declared her candidacy, she said, yeah, I was fired. And she fully talks about that because she knows that's part of her history, and she's going to have to fess up and talk about it with honesty.
Are there candidates out there, Wilbur Ross, who you're looking at, that you're waiting to see what before you decide? What do you need to hear from the current group to make you decide on who would be best to run this country?
Well, I think we're now moving into a period where they will be revealing much more detailed policy things. Christie has already come out with pretty detailed policy. Jeb Bush has come with some detailed ones. I think with Trump, if people asked him really detailed policy questions, they might actually get an answer. The questions that he was asked didn't really lend themselves to much more than entertainment.
So you want more specific questions of Trump about policy to see what his solutions are.
Not just of Trump, of all of them.
Of all of them.
Of all of them.
Yeah, and Nancy mentioned Carly Fiorina. As a business guy, do business people like Carly, having come from business, or not?
Well, I think it's a great idea that we have a woman being very prominent in the Republican nominating process.
Right.
I would like to see her in the A team, not just the GV team, for the next round.
And it sounds like, Nancy, you think she's going to go there.
Well, I think she should. I think it's a more interesting debate. It's a challenge. Let's face it. When you've got that many people on the stage and you can only ask everybody maybe one or two questions, it's very, very difficult for the American public to pull back the layers on policy. I couldn't agree more with Wilbur. We've got to get more detail. I would like a direct question asked of Mr. Trump on whether he wants to go back to what he's implied before, hinted at, a 35% tariff on places like, you know, Mexico and China, when you've got Mexico as our second largest exporter and China as our second largest trading partner. That would have devastating implications for economic growth, and we should really know whether that's where he's intending to go.
It's a great point, actually.
Yep.
That kind of...
Hey, the door is open, Mr. Trump, because China just devalued its currency, so answer that question today.
That kind of granularity is what the voters want. Nancy, thank you. Thanks very much for weighing in. And Nancy Pfotenhauer joining us there. Coming up, the